and welcome to the Slay to Success talk show. You know what time it is. I'm your girl, the CEO and founder of Slay to Success. And what is Slay to Success? It is a leadership and transformational consultant service business. I am a speaker, an author, a mentor, and of course, y'all know I am a retired United States Air Force veteran of 30 years. And so on this show, y'all, I bring in amazing men and women who are living a life of service on their own terms and using the SLAY philosophies to positively impact this world. All right, so if you are here and you're joining us tonight, please make sure that you put into the comments of where you're streaming in from so that you can tell us what your name is. And so we can give you a shout out as we get into this SLAYMAZING conversation that we're going to have tonight. So, what is Slay to Success? Well, everyone knows or should know at this point, right? Because we are in the year 2023, and you've heard Beyonce say slay, and so many other people say slay. Slay means to kill it, to dominate it, and to nail it, to be on point, to impress greatly, and to dream and work hard until you own it. It's not only this big mega word, it's also an acronym, and the acronym stands for S, stay ready to be ready, L, lead out loud, A, sense of community, a sense of family, and Y, you are built to last. And so in this program, I offer 1,000,001 things. It seems like I'm always on the go, but I am seriously here to impact and help influence women and women who are working in leadership roles or women who are transitioning out of a 20+ year career. So I offer programs such as our Transition to Transformation program. I offer leadership and development training, personal branding consultation, Facebook membership group, this, of course, talk show, women empowerment events, as well as a monthly mastermind group. So all of these things can be found if you are looking up on this QR code, and I'll show it really quickly for you all. Go ahead and scan that, okay? And you will get all of the happenings of Slay to Success. And then you'll be able to find out how we can connect and we can collaborate so that way we can do more as we are living this life. Okay. And so thank you all for being here and showing us your name and where you're streaming in from. And so I've got Candace here with us tonight. Hello, Candace, and welcome, my queen, to the talk show. We're going to have a very good conversation with my friend, my sister in arms, retired Command Sergeant Major Perlisa Wilson. All right, y'all. So I'm just going to briefly go over her extensive bio. And if you have read it in the comments, you already know the caliber of woman that is here tonight. And so she graduated from Carver Vocational-Technical High School and began her Maryland National Guard career in May of 1990 as an Automated Logistical Specialist. And in her service, she became an active duty member of the Maryland Army National Guard, and she became the first female first sergeant for the Joint Forces headquarters. She also became the first Maryland Air National Guard active duty woman promoted to the rank of sergeant major with the Directorate of Personnel. All right. She has done 32 years, y'all, of service. And she's earned many military decorations, including the Legion of Merit. She's also a graduate of the U.S. Army Sergeants Major Academy. And aside from her military achievements, Perlisa has also completed many civilian education programs. She earned her Bachelor of Science degree in Management from Coppin State University, a Master of Business Administration degree from the University of Phoenix, and a Master of Science certificate in Mental Health and Wellness, Christian Counseling from Grand Canyon University School of Theology. She resides here in Maryland, y'all, with her husband and 2 children. She is a caregiver, the chapter president of Lambda Beta Alpha Military Sorority, and a member of Israel Life Church in Baltimore. So please, a round of applause for my guest, and we'll get into how we know each other and all that good stuff as I bring her up for this discussion. So welcome, Perlisa. How are you
Yay.
tonight?
Hello. Hey, Slay Queen. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Happy Sunday to you all.
Yes. So, you know, Perlisa,
Yeah.
okay, me and you met when we were at an event that was given and hosted by Dr. X. And Dr. X, y'all, was on our show probably like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Mhm.
So if you want to go and see what that discussion is, go to the YouTube. All right, subscribe, and you can kind of see our discussion there. But I met you there,
Mhm.
and, I saw how so many women were drawn to you, and they were just talking about, oh, you just retired, and now you're the president of Lambda Beta Alpha Military Sorority. And I was like, wow. And then when I learned that we both had served over 30 years of service in the military, I was like, that's my queen. Okay. That right here is she's my queen. And then we met again, and
Mhm.
I was sitting on a panel for the military sorority, and
Mhm.
Dr. X and Robin Fortner was also sitting on that panel. So I was like, it's such a small world, because I didn't know a lot of people, but when I started getting into the community and so forth, and then learning what you did in the military. So give the people, a little brief history of your service in the military.
Okay. So, just as you stated, I served for 32 years, 7 months, and 29 days.
Not that you
I
counted.
just retired. I retired December 31st of 2022, so almost a year ago. And in that, I had a lot of historic positions. So I culminated as the senior enlisted NCO, or the senior enlisted leader of the Maryland National Guard, which I was the senior NCO serving with the adjutant general. And I served as the senior enlisted advisor to both the Army National Guard of Maryland and also the Air National Guard of Maryland. So I was the first female and the first African American to serve in that position. Prior to that, I had served as the first African American Brigade Command Sergeant Major. I was the Brigade Command Sergeant Major for the 58th EMIB, for the 58th Expeditionary Missionary Intelligence Brigade. I was a first Command Sergeant Major, or a first Sergeant Major, to serve on a dual assignment as a Staff Sergeant Major and also a Command Sergeant Major, serving as the battalion CSM for the 110th IO Information Operations Battalion. Uh, I was the first AGR female to be promoted to E9 in the whole history of the AGR force for the Maryland Army National Guard, which in of itself was just, some of the things that I said that I did, I never set out to do, never thought that it would be me. But it happened. So that just lets you know that, you can have your own plans and God has something else planned for you.
Oh
And
my.
prior to that, I was the first female first sergeant for the Joint Forces headquarters of the Maryland Army National Guard, which was really funny because at the time while I was serving as a first sergeant, I was also pregnant. so,
Oh,
so I think I was probably the first pregnant first sergeant also in history. So yeah, I was pregnant with my daughter, which was really funny.
oh yeah. We have very much a similar experience when it came to that. So, okay, let's just go back just a minute, because I just want the audience to really understand the positions in the military. So,
Mhm.
describe what a command sergeant major does.
Okay, so a command sergeant major serves as a advisor to a senior level officer, which is normally an O5 or above. And my positions, I serve all three levels. So I served in O5 and O6, and also general officers. So a command sergeant major is always a senior advisor to that officer, and they're also advisor, mentor, trainer, also to other enlisted soldiers, whether they're peer or subordinate. So in the role of command sergeant major, you do strategic planning, you can do training, you can do teaching, you can do mentoring, and there's a multitude of things that you can do as a command sergeant major, but most of it is always an advisement role. And there's a level of authority that you may have based on your position and based on your placement, if wherever you are, who you're serving with. But the majority of the time, there is really no authority to make certain things happen without that general officer um, helping you, or that field grade officer helping you to um, move forward in whatever policies or actions that you put together. So in my role, oftentimes I wrote different policies, or I wrote personnel actions or administrative plans, which always had to be reviewed and approved by an officer in order to be implemented. But I did a lot of that for many years.
Yeah, and so the audience knows that, command sergeant major, command chief,
Mhm.
these are titles that are given to senior level enlisted members, that are, like she said, helping the senior leaders make the decisions to do what it needs to do for the mission and for the people. And so I do want to welcome a couple people here. Sharice, thank you for coming in tonight. Virgil, I see you from Manchester, England. Thank you for dropping in tonight and listening in. Oh, you love American accents. We would say that about you all, right? When we say we love the British accent, all right?
Right.
So, and he said, to be honest, never done one. And I'm not sure what that comment is too, but I'm sure you'll clear that up for us. So thank you all for being here with us tonight. And as you were talking, Perlissa, you had a lot of first. I mean,
Mm.
you were the first to do a lot of different things. So tell us about how that felt for you, you know?
Well, oh my goodness. So oftentimes it was a heavy burden, because if you're the first, then everyone is looking at you, and it's it's the point of saying, if you mess it up, nobody else may get the opportunity, especially being a woman. Um, but it was great, um, in a sense. It was very rewarding to have senior leaders believe in you so much so that they selected you outside of the norm. And when
Right.
I say outside of the norm, you can understand this when we're serving as senior NCOs and in the military as women. The norm is often a male.
Mm-hmm.
So to be selected as a female, and then to be the first female oftentimes in that position, was very rewarding. It was also very challenging. Um, and it could be scary. It could be
Yeah.
very scary.
Yeah.
And like when we talked before, um, a lot of these first I never set out to do. So most of them were kind of like a command directed type. Like I was just told you were going to. I did not apply for the opportunity. It was just, hey, we're selecting you, or um, we want to select you. Will you do this?
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes when it was to that level, I pretty much had to say yes, because I was such an advocate in my personnel background to say that these opportunities should have been allowed for females, and also for active guard reserve soldiers in the Army National Guard, because oftentimes we did not get the command leadership roles as first sergeants or command sergeant majors. We were always in the staff position, because there was a level of thought to say that this is all you could do. You could not switch over and be command.
Mm-hmm.
So it was also shortcomings for a lot of the active guard, and so which wasn't really, it was only a mentality. Um, it wasn't a rule of law based on regulation. So, to fight through policies or ideologies that were kind of um, implied policies was very difficult. So
Hmm.
when the challenge was brought to me to say like, well, hey, you be the first sergeant, or you be the command sergeant major, um, it was almost like to say I couldn't say no because I was advocating for it to be for it to happen, but I was always looking for it to happen for someone else, not me.
Right.
If that made any sense.
Yeah.
Um, but doing it was was a blessing. I would definitely say that in every position there was so much that I learned, not only about leadership and about soldiers, but about myself,
Hmm.
and just taking myself outside of my comfort zone, doing things that I knew I could probably do with my eyes closed, into doing something that I really had to focus and learn something new. As I said, I was a command sergeant major in the MI field. I was not MI. I went and I trained into um, ASIs, which was acquired skills identifiers for military intelligence, and ended up serving in roles under the military intelligence umbrella. But technically, I never trained in a military um, uh, environment where I learned MI, so
Yeah.
military intelligence. I learned it by skill. I learned it by on the job training. so
Yeah.
so that was different. It was very different for me. It was great, and I found it rewarding, but it was definitely a challenge. And at the same time, I had to still do my personnel operations, making sure I was overseeing the enlisted personnel actions for the entire Maryland Army National Guard, making sure that went well, and the policies and all the regulations were carried out the way that they should have been carried out. And so you had to do two things at one time. And it was a challenge, but it was, like I said, it was definitely rewarding. And I know that I didn't do it of my own self. That was God giving me some serious strength.
That's right. There, yeah, because that's a lot. And when you talk about Maryland, the state of Maryland,
The state, the entire state. Yes,
the entire state of Maryland,
correct.
of making sure policies, procedures, health and welfare,
Mhm.
all these different entities were taken care of is a huge responsibility that I know, some people may think, oh, well, you're not really involved, but you really are
No,
because
you're
when
very involved because
you're very
the
involved,
majority, yeah, the majority of the members of the state are enlisted. So when you're
Mhm.
talking enlisted policies, you have the bulk. So if it's 7,000 soldiers, um, probably 5,000 or more are enlisted.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's just always the case. There's always more enlisted than there are officers. So, you know,
Yes.
so it is a lot because you are looking at the bulk. And even in some of those policies and those policy reviews, I had to review some officer policies also
Mhm.
because some
Yeah.
things connected. So you had to make sure that everything worked well, especially when you got into the command leadership roles like first sergeant and command sergeant major. When you're in those roles, you are advising on everything, and how those things intertwine one another and what works best to make the mission a success for the unit or for the brigade or for the battalion or for the entire organization. And so you can't look at just one element. You have to look at all elements to make sure that everything is running like a well-oiled machine, like it's supposed to be. Because everybody wants mission completion and mission success, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
And if it doesn't happen, it kind of falls on the leadership. So
Yeah, it sure does. Everything rises and falls on leadership.
yeah,
So, you know. So when we're speaking that, and everyone who's attended this show knows that we are going to be speaking a lot about leadership, and there's always a certain um, level of reasoning for this, because when we are looking at leadership principles, it's vast and it's wide and it's deep. There's so many different elements of leadership. And so this is an opportunity for talk to other people about the perspective on leadership and how do you view that. So, Perlisa, as you were moving in the ranks in the Air National Guard, what leadership principles or philosophies guided you? And what did you really see as some of those foundational um, levels that you used and implemented in your journey?
So, first and foremost, we always had our core values as leadership. So, um, we definitely had our our Army values, and I took those to heart. And that was definitely selfless service, duty, responsibility, integrity, ethics. All of those things are just so near and dear to me that I couldn't. I just was raised that way. So, um, and then I stand on the principle of servant leader. So
Mhm.
oftentimes when people get in leadership, we always get it twisted. We think leadership is someone serving us because we're
Mhm.
the leader. And actually it's the opposite. The leader
Yeah.
is actually serving the people.
Yeah.
So, and we can actually affirm this and verify this when we look at our elected officials. So when you elect someone into an office, you are electing them because you believe that they are going to serve you and your community in the best way. They are going to look at what you need and what your needs are, and they're going to go to the higher levels of the government, whether it be local, state, or federal, and they are going to put your needs and your wants and your requirements for your community first and your
Mhm.
family first.
Yeah.
So that's what leaders do. And when that person gets in that position and they're not doing that, then you're upset because you're like, hey, you're not taking into consideration what I want. You're there doing what
Right.
you want to do, and that's not what we elected you to do. It's the
Right.
same principle when you're in leadership in any any organization. You are a servant leader, so you should be serving down. Leadership serves down, and leadership is influence. So you always want to pass on the influence of to the leaders and to those subordinates that you have that you want to be governed by. So if you want to be governed with integrity and ethics and good moral character and selfless service and respect and responsibility, then that's what you have to pass down. If you're not passing that down, when that person now becomes your leader, they're not going to give you back what you are expecting. So
Exactly.
you should always lead the way you want to be led.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then you probably won't have much problems. So respect goes always. You shouldn't disrespect someone who is senior to you or who is your peer. You should respect all the way down to the lowest rank, because one day that private or that second lieutenant is going to be a senior leader, and you want them to emulate what you trained them to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And that is something, it's like one of those powerful, um, you know, kind of looks to it when you can flip it, right? And make it
correct.
more so you serving others as opposed to people serving you.
Correct.
And sometimes when you do get into leadership, and unfortunately some leaders view it the other way because they have not been led that way, right? So they see it as, well, no, they serve me. And and a lot of times those situations turn out to be very contentious, because there's a
Very
lot of
contentious.
people who
You
are
have a
just like,
lot of disgruntled people.
you do,
You have a lot of disgruntled people. And
you do.
also, you're not successful
Yeah,
in a
that's
lot of
so
the
true.
areas that you want to be successful. And you have to be very careful when you lead in that way, because some people feel um, that fear, is is a leadership tactic, and it
Oh,
really isn't. You want the people to respect you, not fear you. So, um, and when people fear you, then after a while, when you're afraid, you when you get your back up against the wall, you lash out. And so
yeah,
you normally that's when it doesn't everything falls apart. So you never want a person to that you're leading to really fear you. You would prefer that they respect you and they reverence you and acknowledge you for who you are and for the position that you hold and what you bring to the table. So
yeah,
they may not always like you,
yeah,
but sometimes we're not always there to become friends. We're there to complete a mission and get the job done. And it's okay. I used to always say we may not be 100% uh, friends, but we will be 100% functional, with
mm,
my team. And that's because everybody needed to know that they were respected, they had an opinion, and that they were a valued person of the team. And, for the most part, I always had great teams, in and of itself. A lot of people that I serve with and work with, we did have friendships, you know.
yeah.
But for the most part, it was more about, hey, let's just get the job done, and I will never ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do myself.
Absolutely. I'm just looking here on the comments and yeah, just making sure that we're good. We're on the up and up on here. Okay, so as you have transitioned, and we've got a comment here that I want to share here. Let's see here. One thing I use today that I learned is never ask a subordinate to do anything that you won't do yourself or help them to do. And that's from Glenn
Ooh.
Roy. And so thank you, Glenn for Roy, for being here and posting that for us, because that's absolutely true. And that is a good, it's just good, wise advice to give. And so when you were talking, Perlisa, you were saying that you did 32 years
Mhm.
of service. Did you really see those 32 years? Like, were there any moments where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but like 32 years is a long time of service.
It is, and I actually never expected myself to get beyond 20. So
Yeah.
I just let you know, um, after my first 10 years when I decided, yes, I'm gonna go for my 20 years, I said I'll be a 20 and done. And at the time that I reached my 20-year anniversary of service, I was actually graduating the Sergeant Major's Academy, and I was a first sergeant graduating the Sergeant Major's Academy. And I said, wow, okay, I have totally exceeded myself because my goal was just to make E7.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you had a
when I
good
when
goal, girl. I was like, 4 years, I'm good, right?
my goal, well, this was after the 10-year mark. So
Yeah.
initially, my first goal was to just complete my bachelor's degree and do my first term. It's like make it and but after my first 10 year, I decided, okay, yeah, I'll go for the 20. But many of the female leaders that I saw were just the rank of E6. So
Hmm.
not many above that, unless they were an officer, and even the officers were junior officers for the most part. So I said I would at least like to make it to be E7, you know, and I made it to E7 within my 12th year of service. So I was actually people would say, "Oh, you were doing really good," and I did. And so I didn't honestly, I didn't think I was going to make it much further than that. Then I treaded on the path to be a warrant officer. So I was tossing it up, and I said, okay, well, I'm either going to make E8 or I'm going to make warrant officer, whichever one comes first. So the E8 came first. At the same time, I had gotten an acceptance packet to be a warrant officer, but I really, really enjoyed being an NCO.
Yeah.
So I and with that I said, oh wow, maybe I'll get a chance to be a first sergeant, you know. never thinking that it would really happen. But I was like, maybe I'll get a chance to be a first sergeant because I always just like first sergeant. Actually,
Right.
there was a commercial many years ago that used to be all you can be commercial in the Army. And the guy said, "Good morning, first sergeant." I was so in love with that commercial. That was actually one of the reasons why I joined. Because I
Oh,
love that
really?
commercial. So
Wow.
I always was like, oh man, I'll get. But when the time came for me to become first sergeant, I didn't want to do it. I was like, no, I
Right.
didn't want to do. It was just, it was a very tumultuous time, and I was like, man, the things are crazy right now. This is not. And my sergeant major, he was my mentor. God rest his soul. He's gone on to glory. But he came to me. He said, "You're going to be the first sergeant." It wasn't even like he was asking me. He was just like, "You're going to be the first sergeant." And I was like, "No, I'm not." And he was like, "Yes, you are." I'm like, "No, I'm not." And I'm like standing at parade rounds having this argument, and he's like 6 feet something. He was a big guy, and he just walks away, and he was like, "That's it. You're the first sergeant. That's it. End of the story." And I'm just standing back there, still under my breath, like, "No, I'm not."
Yeah.
2 days
Yeah.
later, I'm getting an order and they're bringing me down paperwork for me to sign to be the first sergeant of the Joint Forces Headquarters. So
Yeah.
I was just like, I guess I am the first sergeant. And the
Yeah.
colonel actually came down because he was really excited about it. And he was like, "Hey, first sergeant, I just need you to sign these papers." And I was like, I don't want to do this. And he was like, "But you're the right person for the job." So
Mhm.
when he said that to me, along with my sergeant major, who was a mentor, who I highly respected, if I said, I felt like if they believed enough in me to do this at this time for this unit, with so much going on, with so many things being wrong, um, I owed it to them to at least try,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
I did. And I was supposed to be the first sergeant for 2 years. I ended up being the first sergeant for like 3 years and 6 months. But you know, but it was a great tour. We did some great things, and I so enjoyed that. It was a very bittersweet. It's probably one of the most bittersweet positions that I had because yeah, you had to make some tough decisions sometimes, and yeah, you don't. You're like, gosh, ah, you know, I gotta hold you accountable,
Yeah.
and but when you're holding people accountable,
Yeah.
as a leader,
Yeah.
you still have to do it in love,
Yeah.
and let
Absolutely.
soldiers know that, and airmen and troops, see corpsmen, whatever. You have to know that they have an opportunity, especially if it's not career ending. You have
Mhm.
to let them know that there's an opportunity for them to, redeem themselves
Yeah.
and that they can recover from their mistake. And so
Yeah.
that was a big thing for me to make sure that when we had to hold a soldier accountable for something that they had done wrong, I wanted to also make sure that they recognized that I was there to lead them right back to the right path. I'm not going to let you just stay here. You don't have to crawl under a rock and hide out for the rest of your career. You can redeem yourself. You can move forward. You messed up, yes, it happens, but you're still here. So as long as you're still here, you have a chance to make it right. And I think we
Yeah.
have to look at that in life. As long as we're still living, we have an opportunity to make it right, or
Yeah.
make it better. It will get better. So the goal is just to keep living and to keep moving forward. Don't stay stuck in the past.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful because we had the same path. I was a first sergeant for 4 years, and there was so many hard decisions to make. In fact, I was Glenroy's first sergeant, who's on here. He made another comment here. He says, when leaders speak into your life, it may be uncomfortable and trivial, but there is a plan that is laid out before we even know it. They saw you and
Absolutely.
your abilities. And I think
Absolutely.
that's so like important for
Absolutely.
us to recognize when people
Yes.
do see something in us and they know the potential and are pushing you to reach your fullest potential.
Hmm.
That we recognize that that's coming from someplace. And, sometimes we look at things as, oh, that's not for me. Like that. No, I can't do that. And then you get in and it's like, wow, this is the best
Yeah.
job ever.
Best job
Yeah.
ever. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was I thinking, you know?
Yes.
So, yeah, and you're right, life is a journey and it is one big lesson. And so
Definitely.
we got to get back up and keep on trying every
Keep
single time
trying
we
and keep moving forward.
keep
Yes.
moving forward, and so as both of us have retired, okay, and I'm in my second year, and going into my third year now, but you are just short of a year, or has it
Just
been a
short
year?
of a year.
Short of a year. And so, tell us a little bit about your transition and, how are you working or, like moving? Kind of how have you navigated this journey so far?
Wow. So one of the things about transitioning, when I decided to retire, there was plenty of opportunities for me to actually move to a higher level to work at the NGB level. Um, and
And what's
I
that
was
level?
doing
What's that stand
at
for?
National Guard Bureau, which is
Okay.
actually the overarching element of all National Guard, Army, and Air. So there were positions that were offered to me. People, contacted me and say, "Hey, apply for this position, apply for that position." So this would be moving outside of the state and moving to the national level, which I also did serve as the national secretary for the Command Sergeant Major Advisory Council of the Army National Guard. So I was very well known across the 54 states and territories, not only to Army but to also air chiefs. So there were opportunities, but I had gotten to the point where I said, I told my family when I took the position as the CCEL, I'm going to do this for a few years because I was command directed there. I was command selected. Um, and I said, I'll do this for a few years. This job is going to be a lot on the family. It's going to require a lot of time away from home. It's going to require a lot of travel and just so many different things. And in it, I loved it. I loved it. But I made my family a promise that,
Hmm.
you know, I would get back to them. I would do my best to finish this time and then give them some time. So ironically, when I started looking at the my transition to say, hey, I think I'm ready to retire, I actually injured my foot. I actually fractured my foot. I had a small
Mm,
fracture in my foot and I had to have a surgery. So once I had this surgery, um, and I had to have the surgery because it was very painful. And they said, well, you won't be able to do this, you won't be able to do that. So like, what? I'm a command sergeant major. I gotta be able to
right.
do these things. Um, but I had to really sit back and I prayed and and I said, well, God, I did say that I would transition out and you kind of get to the point if you can't be your full best, it's not worth doing it. And I knew I could still move on with some limitations, on the physicality. I would still be deployable, but just the same, um, I didn't want to move on because my family was more important. At the
Yeah.
same time, I found out I had a ill family member in part of the transition. So this person was going to need some attention, and I was probably the closest family member next to my mom that could actually give care. And my
Hmm.
mom is older than his family member, so I was like, no, mom, you can't do it. I know you would want to, but I can't let you take this on because it's too much.
Yeah.
So I stepped in to serve as a caregiver for a family member. So it worked out because as I was transitioning, I transitioned straight from the military right into being a caregiver.
Oh,
And it was a lot. It was
yeah.
definitely a lot. But the a lot of the things that I learned in the military helped me to be able to be of an assistance as a caregiver, and I was also healing physically, myself, but mentally, it took a space for me because one of the things that I did in my research when I was studying mental health and wellness with the Christian emphasis, um, I researched veterans, transitioning veterans, and women veterans. And in my research, what I found was that many women veterans actually have a harder time transitioning than men.
Mm-hmm.
We think that the men have such a hard time. And the reason why we think that men have such a hard time transition is because there's more men in the military than it is women. So the
Yeah.
number is higher, the ratio is higher. However, women really tie their purpose into what they do, their careers, different things like that. So when women leave the military, a lot of times we not only leave a sense of community with our purpose and what we do, we also leave friends, um, and everything. So many women transition from the military, and maybe you transition in one state or one place, and then you move back home. Well, all of your friends that you had were in the military, so now
Yeah.
you've moved away from what you did, and you also moved away from the people that you were connected to. So
Yeah.
women have a very hard time transitioning, and they really need to have something that is a purpose for them. They need to feel a purpose. They need to fill a void as far as making sure they have something to do. But at the
Yeah.
same time, we also need to learn how to decompress and how to, I would say, demilitarize ourselves,
Yeah.
um, because we are so stuck and groomed in it, you know. So I saw someone about 2 months after my transition, and they were a retired officer, and literally I recognized the voice, but I recognized the eyes. I could not recognize the face. But he saw me and he said, "Sergeant Major." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I know you. I know you." And he said, "You don't even recognize me." And I was like, "I know your voice. I'm just trying to get your name." He looks so different. And he said,
Mm.
"Well, you still look like a sergeant major."
Oh, what?
And, he said, you still look like a sergeant major. You still look like you're in the military. He said, you need to deprogram yourself. And I said, wow, sir. And he said, yeah. He said, do something different, do something drastic and do something different with your hair. And he said, the only thing I see is you got on some colored nail polish. And I started laughing because that was so very true. And so I said, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. He said, deprogramming yourself is very important. He said, so you want to move away from the military. He said, it's going to always be in us. He said, once a soldier, always a soldier. Yeah, that's true. He said, but you have to learn how to now become a civilian. You have to learn how to get yourself back. He's like, because
Yeah.
you've been, command sergeant major or first sergeant for so long or whatever. He said, now you just want to be Perlisa. And I said, wow. And that was so profound to me. But I really had actually studied that myself. And so I
Yeah.
was thinking, like, man, I studied this and I'm looking at it and I wrote research papers about it and I wasn't even doing it myself. So literally 2 weeks later I went and I changed my hair and I put some color in my hair,
Yeah.
and everything, just to really make myself look different so that I can start doing what we call deprogramming ourselves and being military. I mean, I still talk with the military lingo,
Oh, yeah.
um, and all of that stuff, but just to start recognizing that, hey, there's another side of me and there's another side of life was very, very important. And I didn't want to lose myself. And I also didn't want to think that the only thing that I had to give in life was to serve in the military, because I know that
Yes.
that's not the case.
Yeah.
I definitely knew that from the get go. But after 32 years, it's all I've ever done. I did it my entire adult life. I joined the military when I was 17.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know anything else but Army,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
I
know?
mean, you're so right. The whole premise behind, being in it for so long that you don't even sometimes know how to be,
Correct.
when you retire or separate or whatever the case may be, from your service. And I talk a lot about the identity, rediscovering who you are and getting back to that. So the officer, I mean, like I applaud him for saying that, right? Because he's like, "What are
Yeah,
you
he
doing?"
had a beard, he had a ponytail, he had let
Uh-huh.
his hair grow, and I was like, I know this guy, and I'm like, I still see his face, but all I can remember is that I know those eyes and I know that voice, but I could not place the name. And I
Yeah,
started going through all of these rosters of like people that I knew that may have retired, and I was like, oh my goodness, I cannot recognize who he was. He just looked so different, but the thing that he said was, you got to deprogram yourself. And I heard
yeah.
that from a few other people who have retired
Oh yeah,
before, that I had talked to, and they were like, yeah, do something different, change yourself. I mean, me, you see, I still wear camouflage. I love it,
yeah.
but I,
But it's a different
you
version
know,
of camouflage. It's in a dress, Perlisa.
yes,
It's like it got a bow on it. Like I'm like, I'm loving that, because it's your
yeah.
version of the
So
camouflage.
it's still some things that I like, that I gained from the military, but at the same token, I'm doing so much different to
Yeah,
actually recognize that there are other things in life that I can enjoy, and learning myself in a different way. So, um, talking to different women in reference to transition and letting them know, like, hey, it's okay.
yeah,
You have a quality, you have a worth, and go and do something different. Go and work in another capacity, so oftentimes we see a lot of us that retire from the military, we go right back and work for the military in a civilian
yep,
capacity, as
yep,
if we have nothing else to give to the other world. And I
yep,
think that that's a way of doing something that we're familiar with, because we're still afraid of a level of transition.
yeah,
And there's nothing wrong with that, because sometimes those jobs are very lucrative, and they're good jobs. And hey, if you can do the job, that's great. But at the end of the day, learn that you can actually go somewhere else and do something else, and you don't have to put yourself in a box to say that this is all that I can do, because
yeah,
this is all that I know. Try
yeah,
something different, try
yeah,
to go and work, around people who haven't been in the military, because I can guarantee you that you have a lot to give them,
oh
you
yeah.
know. You have a
I
lot to give them. They can
I
learn so much from
absolutely,
you.
yeah, you are just talking my language because, and I've got a lot of comments here, and I'll show Glenn Roy, he's in here. The Most High will slow us down and make us follow his path for us. Many are called, but few are chosen. Count that
Absolutely.
slow down as a part of him choosing you to carry out that service for your family member.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I
Thank
love that.
you.
And he's also says it was growing out a goatee for him. He now has over 5 years locked. And the external says civilian, but the military training and the ethic never leaves. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely correct.
The
Yes.
military skills are broad enough to be united on any
Any
job.
level. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have
Yes.
transferable skills, and people underestimate what they have. And so when you speak to, people jumping back into, which for me is no shade, like if you're going back into the federal and government space and that's where
Mhm.
you're at and that's where you love to be at, then,
Right.
do that.
Do
But
that
for,
thing.
for folks that are like, I want something new, try something new,
Try
you know.
something new.
I'm trying
Exactly.
something new, y'all. You see me showing up.
Yes.
I'm in here in the new space. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing, so it's all about, just doing
Yeah.
something that feels good and it feels
Yeah.
right, until
Absolutely.
you can get to something, maybe this is a bridge. We
Ex
never know.
exactly. And
Yeah,
I
you never know.
definitely, people would ask me, "What are you going to do after retirement? What are you going to do when you retire?" And I would say nothing. And and I said that, before I knew that I was going to go into caregiving. I said that, and it was kind of jokingly, but actually in my mind, I really wanted to just do nothing for a while. I really just wanted
Yeah.
to just relax, and just have a moment to myself. Uh, just sleep late, if that will,
Yeah. Yeah.
watch the game shows or something like that. So I was just like, I don't want to do anything. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to just relax and enjoy myself, and um, I'll show up at all the promotions and the retirement ceremonies. That's what I'll do. And that's actually what I do. So, if I'm invited to a ceremony or something, I go. I still support. I'm still very actively engaged and actively involved with a lot of still serving members. Just talking to them, advising them, giving them good counsel, giving them prayer. Just did things that I actually did still while I was in uniform. A lot of people used to always say, you should go be a chaplain. And I'm like, no, because if I go be a chaplain, you guys won't talk to me because a lot of times they wouldn't go to the chaplain because the chaplain was an officer. So
Yeah,
they were afraid to go to the officer. So they were just like, I'm going to come to you and can you pray with me? And sure, absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
We're just going to sit down here and have this kind of talk. So I didn't ever want to go and be a chaplain because not because I didn't think that they did great work, but it was because I did not want to put up a level of what I consider somewhat of a wall because
yeah,
I saw how some soldiers would be just so shy of going, I don't want to go to the chaplain and talk,
yeah,
I'll just come
yeah,
talk to you. So that was also very near and dear to me. So I made sure that, hey, if soldiers felt like they wanted to continue to talk to me and hey, wanted to call me for a little counsel or some spiritual guidance or something like that, absolutely. I'm here for you. I'm there for you. That's always because that's what God has called me to do. So that's not going to be taken away.
yep,
But right now, just the transition space is very rewarding to me.
yeah,
Being serving with my sorority and being the chapter president for our chapter here in Maryland. That's been great because, of course, we do a lot of networking. That's how I got to meet you. And then
mm-hmm,
in meeting you, I found out I have some sisters that know you and have served with you,
yep.
and they talk about how great you are. And I was like, yeah, she is really great. So,
You know, our friend, I was just gonna
yeah.
insert this a little bit. So our friend, that
Mhm.
she's part of your chapter, but I used to
Right.
supervise her. I could
Yep.
tell you, I can guarantee you, in the moment when I was supervising, she did not like Sergeant Hemingway. All right, because there was a lot of stuff happening in there. I was like, we got to get our lives together in here. But after you grow and you mature and you kind of see, and I have seen her over the years, and her name is
Mhm.
Melanie. She has just blossomed into this amazing woman.
Yes.
Not that she wasn't
Mhm.
already then,
Mhm.
but as we grow older and we get a little more season on us, I was like, oh, you're part of the chapter?
Yes.
Okay, you know. So, I was just
Yeah.
like, this is so beautiful to see just a full circle, a full
Mhm.
circle of women who are wanting to again make an impact, a positive impact in the
Correct.
community, and it goes on beyond to the world.
Correct. And that's a part of your acronym with SLAY when you're saying, being active in our communities. um, we as veterans, we definitely have to go back and make sure that we are seeking and searching out other veterans because so
Yeah,
many of us are not receiving the resources that we need, not getting the benefits that we deserve, not getting help that is needed, and we're so many veterans are disconnected,
yeah,
and so you have this fight and they're dealing with different mental health issues because they feel disconnected because they did lose they lost a purpose and they did not find a way to gain it back. They didn't have that support system and that channel to stay connected with someone or to connect with someone or to someone or an organization that could help them with a healthy transition. So it's
yeah,
very important for veterans to make sure that we're working with one another and reaching out to connected and sharing information, especially African American veterans and especially women veterans because we are the smaller demographic. So we
yeah,
definitely have to make sure that we're sharing information, sharing our knowledge, so that if I always say this, if each one of us can reach one of us, then we can teach one of us something that we've learned.
yeah,
So that is a a challenge that I give to every veteran. Like no matter how big or small you think it is, tell it to the next person so that information can continue to be shared so that we can know that there are places that are out here that can help us. We should not see so many homeless veterans on the street. And we think that every homeless veteran is a male. No, there are homeless women veterans also. And,
Yeah.
we come across them. And then there's when we get this stigma. So oftentimes people look at women and they don't see veteran.
Yeah.
The only way
Yeah.
they think that if we're a veteran is if we're this I mean like maybe lost a limb or something. And even then they still won't give it to you. They won't actually look at you and acknowledge you to say that you're a veteran.
Yeah.
And because we're not those can't we're not walking around with the hat and the t-shirt and the jacket saying, retired veteran or anything like that. Why? Because most of that stuff isn't made for us. It's made for a man. So
Yeah.
we're women. We don't want to wear that. We want our own brand. So I'm putting a challenge out there to somebody to start branding some women veteran gear. That
Y'all
we
heard
can
it
wear.
from the command
Put
sergeant
some
major
put some
retired.
bling on that hat, make it a fedora or something,
Right.
a sun cap or something like that, give us something that we can look for. I found a few t-shirts and everything, and they're cute and all, but it's not
Yeah.
anything that I'm going to wear every day. It was just, hey, something somebody gave to me, and I
Yeah.
enjoy it. But I don't have anything that I can just brand myself and walk out the door with every day. So often, when I walk into a place to be served, they'll literally just say, "What's your spouse's social
Yeah.
security number?"
Oh
And
yeah. I've gotten that.
they don't even say what's the sponsor's social security number. They'll just say, "What's your spouse's?" And I was like, "Well, you don't need his social security number because it won't get you
It
anywhere. You
won't
need
do nothing
mine."
for you.
So I have to remind them, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry," but
Yeah. Perlisa,
sometimes
so, I just
yeah, we have to
I
remind
am
people.
this is something that has been, a little frustrating to hear and to, see, as a woman veteran, and we're in almost 2024,
Hmm.
and we're still having to say, I was the active duty member, or I
Right.
was an active duty
Correct.
member, right? They gave me, because, I'm married to Dominique, who's also, retired chief, active duty chief.
Mhm.
And, I also got the spouse's ID card, right? Because
Right.
when I retired, then I fell under him,
Right.
because, as a family unit.
Mhm.
So I have two. So when I go to base, and I always show my active duty one because I get
Absolutely.
through the gate. But when I go to the clinic for certain things, you have to show your spouses because of the DOD ID number and all this other stuff that goes into it. So I remember going into the clinic one time and, I got two ID cards and they're like, oh, okay, like, let me look up the number and stuff. So I gave them my spouse's, ID card, and they were looking at it and they were like, okay, come on back, Mrs. Hemingway, right? And it's like, oh Lord, here we go. All right. And so, and that's fine. That's fine. But when I got back into the back, they were like, oh, it says here that you've been active duty. Oh, yeah, you were active duty. I said, oh yeah, yeah, I was active
Mhm.
duty. And then they get to know your story and they're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize this or whatnot. But we don't have the gear. My dad wore his retired Air Force hat everywhere he went, everywhere, because he
Right.
said that's what's gonna get you discounts. That's what you get recognized, in the
Right.
military. And so
Right.
when I
Right.
retired, I was like, I am not wearing no Air Force hat out here with no pins
No,
on it. I'm not that's not where I don't
that's not our
envision it.
style.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, so
It,
you're
it
right. And
wasn't made
sometimes
for a woman. It just wasn't made
yeah,
for women. So
yeah.
we just don't
So
have it. So,
yeah.
you
So
know,
I would be very interested. I know, like you said, t-shirts. I have a vendor who does t-shirts and stuff like that. But you're right. Who's gonna be up for the challenge? So we'll see.
yeah. So we definitely have to make ourselves known and make ourselves recognizable,
Yeah.
and recognized. So a lot of times when I'm advocating for veteran rights and resources, especially for women, I often tell a lot of the places and organizations that are trying to advertise, and they're saying, well, we're trying to get more women, and we're trying to bring women into the space. And then I said, well, what's wrong with putting on the flyers, serving all veterans, female and male? You
Mm-hmm.
know, what's wrong with that? And they'll
Yeah.
say, well, well, a veteran is a veteran. I say, yes, but a lot of times what you do is you'll say all veterans are welcome, but you only prepare for the men.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
you have to actually acknowledge
Yeah.
that you are trying to prepare for women veterans also in a
Yeah.
space where you want to give resources, you have to do something a little bit intentional
Yeah.
and purposeful so that women can know number one, that they are invited, and
Yeah.
then for you to remember that I am serving females and males. So sometimes, we have to encourage some of those organizations to make sure that they make the distinction, all veterans invited, male and female. When you put the pictures out there, don't just put a male face out there, put a female and a male face out there so that women can know that they're welcome into that space. So also that women can feel comfortable when they come into that space,
Yeah.
because so oftentimes um, we weren't the audience that they were looking for. And
Yeah.
then we show
True.
up and they're like, what are you doing here? Well, we don't serve spouses. And then you have to explain, well, I'm not the spouse. I'm actually the service member. I'm the
Yeah.
retiree or something like that. And they're like, well, we only have bags for men. Well, you said veteran, so you didn't say it was just male veterans. So you have to say those things so that people can understand that, hey, this is a space that we are now servicing women and men, because women are a very fast growing demographic
Yep.
within the armed services and the veteran community in this country. So before we were less than 10%, but now we're about 20%. And I think before the end of 2029, we're going to be larger than that because a lot of women are still joining the military. And so
Mm-hmm.
we have to definitely make sure that we are in a space where we're talking about women veterans and making sure that um, our male counterparts recognize us and acknowledge us, and also other females, because
Yeah.
the females are just as guilty sometimes when they work in those locations. They outright believe that when a woman walks in, she's the spouse and not
Mm-hmm.
actually the veteran. So
Yeah.
it's about being careful to make an intentional effort to make sure that every veteran knows that they are welcome and they feel welcome and appreciated for their service, and that their service is not undercut. Women have always served in
Yeah.
every conflict of this country, even before we were being acknowledged for our service. And it's been over 77 years since the Integration Act, was signed into law to allow women and men to be integrated into the military. And so that's a whole lifetime. And
Yeah.
yet we're still fighting
Still.
for recognition. And
Still.
so so when they say, people used to always say, well, why they got to say so much about you're the first and you're this and you're that? And I was like, well, hey, if it would have been happening before, you wouldn't have to worry about it, you know? And so it's a shame that it took so long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's how I looked at it. It's a
Yeah.
shame that I was the first, because there were so many women that came before me that definitely could have fit the bill, could have done the job um, just as well as I have, maybe even better. I don't know, but they could have done the job and they should have had an opportunity, but they did not have that opportunity because um, we were so male conscious with uh, our service and
Yeah.
positioning,
Yeah. And it's still happening. It's
and it's
still
still
happening in a
happening.
lot of
Yeah.
different, and I say that it's getting a little bit better, but there's still a lot more work to be done.
It's a lot more work to be done.
And so if you are a women veteran and you've been hanging out with us, or if you come back for the hashtag replay, just know that you are not alone, that there are many of us that have served. Even if you served a few years, that's still a service,
Service.
and you
Right.
are a women veteran. and to make that known to people that, sometimes don't understand the story behind what they see. And so I'm learning that in my transitioning, because I wasn't as in tune when I was wearing the uniform. And
Mm-hmm.
as I've gotten out of the uniform, I'm like, oh my goodness, yeah, it's a real thing out here.
It is a real thing. It is really. I was so shocked and amazed that well, I won't say amazed because amazed is pretty good. I was
Yeah.
shocked that you know I still had to say certain things, and I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And literally, I would receive mail here at my house addressed to my husband with my rank. My
Ah,
husband never served in the military, so unlike
wow.
you, I'm not
Yeah.
a dependent, at
Yeah.
all. My
Yeah.
family are the dependents. So my
Yeah.
husband's never served in the military, and go figure this. I've even had mail come to my house from the organization in which I served in, addressed with my rank to my husband, coming from the
Ah,
Maryland National Guard. Yes. How
really?
yes, how I mean, yeah, how crazy is that? So again, it's,
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
you
my
say
husband's
it's
a good
crazy,
supporter
but
of
I
me,
can
but
see
he
it.
was just, huh?
Yeah.
Like that ain't nothing he ever did, and they didn't think to do. And so, he's totally proud of my service and everything that I did, but he'll tell you quick. He's like, no, she's a military person. I don't do none of that. He quickly cuts that off, like, nope, that's
Right.
her. Like I'm just a spouse. He'll say
Right.
things like that, but it's just it is something that we need to bring awareness to.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about serving with the military sorority, and there are so many other military sororities that are working to do the same thing. But that is one of the things that we want to make sure that we're doing, is to ensure that we're providing a sense of purpose
Yeah.
to women, and a community, a safe space where women can talk and relate, be connected, receive information, receive resources, get networking,
Mhm.
and just have different avenues and outlets to be able to do the things that we do, even if it's just being a caregiver, if it's
Yeah.
just being a homemaker or a spouse, just staying at home and now taking care of your kids. We want to make sure that we have all of the space, and you have the right to do that. And you don't have to feel less about your service because you did serve. And you should feel great because less than 3% of our population has actually served in the military. So for all of us, no matter, like you said, no matter how short or long your service was, if you served, you served, and you have something to be proud of, and you should be treated with the respect and receive everything that you are entitled to receive because of your veteran status. And so we need to make sure that we are working that angle all across the board for every veteran in this country, even outside this country, but just making sure that we are taking care of one another, especially our women, because we are the smaller population. So we got to make sure that we take care of each other. And I just to say, we got to be sisters when it comes down to this. We were sisters in
Yeah,
arms,
absolutely.
and now we just still have to make sure that we are sisters by the arm, making sure that we're taking care of each other, and not losing ourselves because we stepped into the next level of life.
Yeah.
There's a lot more for us to do, and there's a lot for us to give in our
Yeah.
communities.
You're
Yeah,
right. And that's why I stepped in this space that I am as well, just to help other women, to know that they are specifically, like I said before, not alone, and that there are other women who want to stay connected, want a safe space, just want to be, just want to
hmm,
be, right?
that's
And
what it
just
is.
talk through some things that are
Right.
unique, and challenging for us, especially in these unprecedented times that we are living in today.
Absolutely.
um, so we've been on here for a minute.
Yeah.
It's a little bit over an hour. So I have, just one more thing for us to talk out. But when you look at your life and where you're at right now, and how you're moving forward, because we all know that tomorrow is not promised to anybody, right? So what is going to be Perlisa's legacy?
So I would say my legacy would be everyone would know that I did my best to help people,
Mm-hmm.
um, not just veterans, not just service members, but people in general. Um, and patience, kindness, and wellness is like a mantra that I live by. You have to learn to be patient with everyone, where they are and where you are, and you also have to give patience to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, for me, I'm learning that everything doesn't have to happen right away.
Yeah.
you know and so I'm saying that to myself, but I also say that to so many of my other um, female veteran and friends, to say that it doesn't have to happen right away, and give yourself time to prepare yourself and um, learn yourself and relearn yourself in the newness of life where you are,
Right.
because we're all in different spaces of our life. Every 10 years is a decade, so things change.
Yeah.
And we have to look at ourselves like that. If if we dressed a certain way in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and now here we're in the 2000s, we have to recognize, like, hey, we're changing and all of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's patience. Being kind, you know and is very important. Sometimes kindness just can go a long way.
Yeah.
And so I heard someone say sometime, you can be nice, but you're not always kind. And they didn't say it to me, they said it to someone else. But
Mm.
they said it to this person because the person was doing nice things, but they weren't being very kind with it.
Uh,
So, um, in your niceness, learn to be kind, and because that's a different level. Kind and patience kind of cross the same paths. And so, it's like if I'm giving you something and I really want to give it to you, if I just say, here, you know, you don't appreciate it as much as if I say, well, here, I'd like to present you with this gift,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So if you're giving something to somebody, don't give it to them on a garbage pail, you know. So it's just like, don't give it to them on a garbage pail top, give it to
Yeah.
them in a nice way. Serve it on a platter because you want them to receive it in that way. And
Mm.
wellness, making sure that we are dealing with our mental health space, because mental health is definitely a real thing, and mental health is health. It is
Yeah.
good health. It
It
is
is.
being healthy all the way around. And mentally, we're finding if you're not healthy mentally, usually the effects of the mind start to begin to affect what's going on in your body.
Yes.
So
You're absolutely right.
making sure that you are mentally and spiritually and emotionally healthy is so very important. Wellness of the mind is so very important. Taking that time for yourself, taking a breather, relaxing your mind, doing those things that you need to do to calm yourself, calm your spirit, get your frustrations out or whatever without harming or hurting yourself or someone else is
Yes.
so very important. And I tell people, when people say, "Oh, I need a moment, I need a minute, I need space." Okay, take your space, but don't isolate. you
Yeah.
know be careful not to isolate, because taking space and isolation is two different things. And a lot of times people will isolate themselves to say, well, I needed space, but then they have isolated themselves so much no one can come and rescue them. So we want
Yeah.
to make sure that you're being very important about your mental space and talking to someone, even if you find that person that you can share, um, and trust as a safe space, to let them know, hey, something is going on. I'm not feeling myself. I just need you to check on me. If I don't reach back out to you, you check on me. Finding that person that can be that for you is so very important. Finding an outlet is so very important. finding that emotional well-being is so very important. So checking on your mental health is is extremely important in this time, and we're seeing it. We're seeing people just not in good mentally healthy spaces, and how it is affecting us in our families and in our communities and in our country. And
Yes.
so we definitely have to make sure that we're being aware and and vigilant for one another. So I think that I would say patience, kindness, and wellness is where I am right now in this period of transition. I
Yeah.
think I'm going to stay there for a long time,
Yeah. Well, I
and
tell you what, Perlisa,
continue doing that.
your message has resonated with several of our viewers.
Thank
So
you.
first, Glenn Roy earlier said, when we were talking about good leadership, and I forget exactly what we were talking about, but he's put on the back end. People always remember how you make them feel, and I think it's
Correct.
when we were
Hmm.
talking about the first sergeant
Yes.
stint of how you treat people through that. And then he also said that patience, kindness, and wellness is a great mantra. I'm going to use that along with my stoic applications. So I'm interested in knowing what those are for him.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, he says he loves that. And then he also said that being nice is the reflex, being kind is being intentional.
Intentional. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then
Very
Candace
intentional.
also said being nice is not the same as being kind. That's a
Correct.
good bar and something that I'm going to be mindful of in my own kindness, niceness, and the observation of others.
Yes.
So I think these are very good ways for us to kind of look at and how we are doing it and how people are responding to us,
Hmm.
and you bring up such a great point about mental health, and the way that some people in our communities are dealing with some of the issues. We just look at disparities, we look at, just the way that the economics are, and it's just overflowing into our community. So some transparency for our audience. AJ had a basketball game yesterday, and his first basketball game, and I saw some kids are really struggling with losing. Now, you
Hmm.
know, times, when we were younger, when you lost a game, you still had good sportsmanship, right? You still
Yeah.
had to acknowledge, hey, that's a loss. And we,
Hmm.
we did the best that we could. Well, when you see chairs flying and, people, um, ill mouthing about, their performance or other people's performance on the team at such a young age,
Correct.
you kind of see that the world has changed
Hmm.
significantly. And I wonder, what's happening, what's going on. And that's an opportunity for us to step in. So, stepped in, asked, hey, how's it going? What's going on? What's happening,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
And it's not just we're not trying to be nosy or anything or getting into
Yeah.
people's businesses, but we can see it's like so apparent that they were hurting from other things, not just from
Right.
the game loss. So
Exactly.
yeah, it is trickling in our communities.
Hmm.
So I appreciate you being here.
Thank
Yeah, I
you. I
know,
appreciate you having me.
yeah, and you're getting ready to celebrate your birthday.
Yay.
Yes. And so, happy birthday, happy
Thank
early
you so
birthday
much.
to you.
Hmm.
And enjoy your day. Hopefully, you're going
Yes.
to do exactly what you said you were going to do.
Yes. I plan to make it intentional.
Yes, please do.
Yes.
Thank you to my audience who came here.
Thank you so much,
Um,
everyone.
yeah, and provided some great insight and comments to what we were speaking to today. If you come back, please make sure you put in hashtag replay so we can acknowledge that you came back and give you some shout outs. And this is happening, y'all, on the Sundays that don't fall on holidays and all these other things. All right. So I will make sure that you stay posted, but we will have a guest next Sunday at the same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on this channel, on this page. Again, if you are looking for the opportunities like Perlisa was talking about, of being in community, just connecting, getting to know one another better, just go ahead and scan the QR code and you will see all the things that Slate to Success has been up to. All right. And we will get you channeled in, dialed in to wherever you need to go. So that way you're not being left out of anything that we are a part of. So again, Perlisa, my queen, thank you so
Yes,
much.
Queen. Thank you
Keep
so
on
much. Thank you for
slaying.
having me. Yes, you keep
Yes.
slaying.
Keep
Thank
on
you for
slaying
everything that
until you
you
can't slay no more.
do. Yes. Good night, everyone, and have a great rest of your Sunday evening. God bless.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.
Bye-bye.